From Manila to the globe, this is World Newsfeed, bringing you the biggest stories shaping our times. Good morning, I'm Raine Musñgi. Let's dive into the headlines making a global impact. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz lost a confidence vote in Parliament Monday. The German Parliament accepted his invitation to withdraw its confidence in him and his government, clearing the way for an early election on February 23, necessitated by the collapse of his government. Scholz's three-party coalition fell apart last month after the pro-market Free Democrats quit in a row over debt, leaving his Social Democrats and the Greens without a parliamentary majority, just as Germany faces a deepening economic crisis.
Abgegebene Stimmkarten 717.
717 voting cards cast, 207 in favor, 207 against, 394 abstentions, 116 abstentions. At least 367 votes are required to approve the vote of confidence in the federal chancellor. The federal chancellor's motion did not achieve the required majority of at least 367 votes in favor. I will inform the federal president of the result of the vote without delay.
Scholz, who will head a caretaker government until a new one can be formed, defended his record as a crisis leader who had dealt with the economic and security emergency triggered by Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. If given a second term, he said he would invest heavily in Germany's creaking infrastructure rather than making the spending cuts he said the conservatives wanted. But an opposition chancellor candidate, Friedrich Merz, sharply attacked Scholz ahead of the no-confidence vote, accusing him of a failed economic policy.
Stimmen heute endlich über die Vertrauensfrage ab, die Sie, Herr Bundeskanzler, eigentlich.
It is embarrassing how you behave at the European level. You are an embarrassment to Germany. It's embarrassing to see how you behave in the European Union. And then your energy policies. You are leaving the country in one of the biggest economic crises in post-war history. There have been two times when Germany was in recession 2 years in a row. One was Gerhard Schroeder, but at least he then introduced Agenda 2010. The second is Olaf Scholz. And you stand here and declare all should continue as before. Running up debts at the expense of the younger generation, spending money, and as far as the competitiveness of the German economy. Mr. Chancellor, I listened carefully. The idea of competitiveness of the German economy didn't appear even once in your speech this morning.
The leader of South Korea's ruling party, Han Dong-hoon, said he was stepping down Monday, 2 days after the parliament passed President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment vote. Han received party backlash over his calls for President Yoon's impeachment, but he said he had no regret in doing so.
I am stepping down from the position of leader of the People Power Party. With the resignation of the party's Supreme Council members, the council has collapsed, making it impossible for me to continue fulfilling my duties as party leader in a normal manner.
This comes as South Korea's Constitutional Court said it will hold the first hearing in the case reviewing President Yoon's impeachment on December 27th. The first hearing will be preparatory to confirm major legal issues of the case and schedule, among other matters. Earlier Monday, the Constitutional Court began reviewing the impeachment of President Yoon over his December 3 martial law attempt, starting a process to decide if he will be removed from office, while investigators plan to question him this week. The court has up to 6 months to decide whether to remove Yoon from office or reinstate him. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump defended his plans to impose tariffs on many foreign imports at a news conference on Monday at his Mar-a-Lago club in Palm Beach, Florida. Trump has pledged to boost American industry by imposing a 10% universal import tariff and 60% tariff on Chinese imports. has also threatened 25% duties on goods from Mexico and Canada, as well as an additional 10% tariffs on Chinese goods as a way to push them to clamp down on the flow of the deadly opioid fentanyl and illegal immigration to the U.S. The three countries are America's top trading partners.
Tariffs will make our country rich.
But won't they raise prices?
Properly used. They tax us. Forgetting just for a second about the word tariff. They tax us, we tax them. And they tax us almost in all cases, they're taxing us, and we haven't been taxing them. And we have all the cards. And until I came along, don't forget, and Howard was going over the numbers with me last night, we took in $600 billion and more in taxes and tariffs from China. No other president took in 10 cents, not 10 cents, not 10 cents. And no, well, we're going to be doing things. We're going to be treating people very fairly. But the word reciprocal is important, because if somebody charges us, India, we don't have to talk about own, if India charges us 100%, do we charge them nothing for the same? You know, they send in a bicycle and we send them a bicycle. They charge us 100 and 200. India charges a lot. Brazil charges a lot. If they want to charge us, that's fine, but we're going to charge them the same thing.
In Canada, Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc, a member of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's inner circle, was quickly named Finance Minister on Monday. Former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland quit the same day after clashing with Trudeau on issues including how to handle possible U.S. tariffs, dealing an unexpected blow to an already unpopular government. In a stinging resignation letter, Freeland dismissed Trudeau's push for increased spending as a political gimmick that could hurt Ottawa's ability to deal with the 25% import tariffs U.S. President-elect Trump says he will impose. The resignation by Freeland, who also served as Deputy Prime Minister, is one of the biggest crises Trudeau has faced since taking power in November 2015. It also leaves him without a key ally when he is on track to lose the next election to the official opposition Conservatives. But LeBlanc, shown on camera right now, he has a lot of confidence in the government of Trudeau.
Chrystia Freeland is somebody that I have worked with for well over a decade. She's somebody that I admire as a colleague, that I appreciate as a friend. She has accomplished a great deal for our government as Foreign Affairs Minister, as International Trade Minister, as Intergovernmental Affairs Minister, and most recently as Finance Minister. She has a proud record of delivering for Canadians programs as important as a national child care program, the Canadian dental benefit. So I'm proud of her record as Minister of Finance. She's contributed to the public policy life of our country in an exemplary way. And I look forward now to assuming the responsibility of being Minister of Finance, talking to my colleagues as we prepare for what will be a 2025 budget. And I have a lot of confidence in the decisions our government, our cabinet has made, but will obviously do my job as Minister of Finance over the coming months. Obviously, the threat of tariffs coming from an incoming administration and what we need to do to protect the Canadian economy. It's an honor for me tonight to become Canada's Finance Minister and to remain as the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs. I look forward to working with Canada's premiers as I have for the last number of years on some important challenges facing the country.
Meanwhile, China urged the United States to abide by the One China principle and stop arming Taiwan. Foreign Ministry spokesman Lin Jian, at a regular briefing in Beijing Monday, reiterated China's consistent and unequivocal position, firmly opposing the military contact between the U.S. and China's Taiwan region.
China is firmly opposed to the U.S. military ties with and arms sales to China's Taiwan region. This position is consistent and unequivocal. We urge the United States to abide by the One China principle and the 3 China-U.S. joint communiques, especially the August 17 communique, Stop Arming Taiwan, and Stop Abetting and Aiding Taiwan Separatists' Attempt to Seek Secession Through Military Buildup. The Taiwan authorities' plot to seek secession through military buildup and soliciting foreign support for that agenda is doomed to fail. China will firmly defend its national sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity.
The Chinese businessman with close links to Prince Andrew said he had done nothing wrong and was not a spy after he was named in court as being suspected Chinese agent by the British authorities. Yang Tengbo, described in a ruling last week by the Special Immigration Appeals Commission, or SIAC, as a close confidant of Andrew, waived his right to anonymity on Monday so he could respond to the accusation. The 50-year-old, who had been previously granted anonymity in the SIAC proceedings, was removed from a flight from Beijing to London in February last year and told that Britain intended to ban him from the country. Yang appealed against the ban at the Special Immigration Appeals Commission, which rejected his case in a ruling last Thursday, the first time the reported relationship had come to light. Britain's Home Office told Yang they had reason to believe he was engaging or had previously engaged in covert and deceptive activity on behalf of the United Front Work Department, or UNFD, an arm of the Chinese Communist Party. State apparatus. On Friday, Andrew, the younger brother of King Charles, issued a statement to the BBC and other media in which he said he had ceased all contact with the individual once concerns were raised. The ruling said evidence obtained from Yang's phone showed Andrew had authorized him to set up an international financial initiative to engage with potential partners and investors in China. The ruling did not say what the fund was intended for.
Mr. Speaker, the first duty of any government is national security, so we welcome the court's decision to uphold the Home Office's position in regard to the exclusion of H6, who can now be named as Yang Tengbo. The Special Immigration Appeals Commission concluded that there was a basis for the conclusion that H6 had been in a position to generate relationships with prominent UK figures which could be leveraged for political interference purposes by the Chinese Communist Party, including the United Front Work Department and the Chinese state. The government has also set out our approach to China. It will be consistent and strategic. We will challenge where we must in order to keep our country safe, compete where we need to, and cooperate where we can, for example, on matters like climate change.
A spokesperson of the Chinese Foreign Ministry said on Monday that China had always been open and above board and has never engaged in deception or interference. We'll pause for a break here. When we come back, a private school shooting rattles a U.S. neighborhood and a New York village that's good enough to eat. Keep it here on BNC for your World Newsfeed.
Two reasons why. I think the first one is I come from a rice farming background in Ilocos Norte. I have relatives that does rice farming and really saw the complexities that they saw every single day. And second is really my immersion in Singapore. Earlier this year, I went to Singapore and I interned for a startup that helped shrimp farmers manage the risks of disease testing in Vietnam. So having to understand that risks is the biggest, most vulnerable factors that affect farming, I tried to apply that in the Philippines, and AgriConnect came to be.
The latest news, national issues, the political scene, and conversations with prominent personalities. All these firsthand at the forefront.
It's still continuing with hearings on the EJ.
But we can recommend the filing of cases with the proper offices or agencies.
It is always victimizing the poor, so we will continue to go against corruption in the budget.
At the Forefront with attorney Karen Jimeno, 8 a.m.
Oh my
Magandang gabi, ako po si Pinky Webb.
Ako naman si Corina Sanchez Rojas. Simulan na natin ang agenda.
We're not confident with numbers, ma'am. because impeachment is a legal process and not political activity.
The PSA recently informed us, Mr. Chair, that all non-existent.
We need nuclear warships. It will be provocative and will be seen as an escalation. We don't do that. The Philippines does not escalate tensions.
Sa bawat issue, may anggulo at ang balita may agenda.
Welcome back to World Newsfeed. Back in the U.S., a shooting at a Christian school in Madison, Wisconsin left at least 3 people dead on Monday, including the suspected shooter. Madison police said 5 people were injured and children were among the dead. The shooting took place at an Abundant Life Christian School, a private institution that teaches some 400 kids from kindergarten through grade 12. The suspected shooter, identified as a juvenile who police officers found dead when they arrived at the school. The teenage shooter's identity and motive were not yet known.
Today truly is a sad day for Madison and for our country. It is a day that I believe will live in our collective minds for a very, very long time. Here are the details. Today at 10:57 a.m., our team was called to the Abundant Life Christian School in reference to an active shooter. We know that 3 people are dead, including the suspect shooter. We know that the suspect shooter was a teenage student who attended the school. At this time, we're not releasing the age or gender of the student or any other identifying remarks about the student. 2 other people have died. That died were a teacher and a teenage student. 6 other people were injured. 2 students are now in critical condition in the hospital, and these injuries are considered life-threatening injuries.
What kind of gun was used today?
We know it was a handgun. We know a handgun was recovered.
All right, sit down right there. Was the shooting confined to one classroom, or did it spread out throughout?
We know it was confined to one space. I do not know if it was a classroom or a hallway. Yeah, so let me say that the cause and manner in which the shooter died will be determined by the inmate. But what I can tell you is the shooter was dead upon our arrival, police department arrival, and no officers fired their weapons. What was the motivation? I do not know. But I will tell you this, our detectives are working hard in the investigative process to find out as many answers as we can so that we can further prevent these things from happening, not only in this community, but in other communities around our country. I think we can all agree that enough is enough, and we have to come together to do everything we can to support our students, to prevent press conferences like these from happening again and again and again.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump says Turkey will hold the key to what happens in Syria. It's after rebels toppled the government of Bashar al-Assad earlier this month. Turkey, a NATO member, backed the rebels, whose assumption of power in Damascus ended Syria's 13-year civil war. Turkey reopened its embassy in Damascus on Saturday, 2 days after its intelligence chief visited the Syrian capital.
Will you ask Putin to give up Assad?
Well, I hadn't thought of it. I think we have to get on with our lives. We'll have to see what happens. But right now, Syria has a lot of, there's a lot of indefinites. Nobody knows what's going to happen with Syria. But I think Turkey is going to hold the key to Syria, actually. I don't think you've heard that from anybody else, but I've been pretty good at predicting.
The UN Syria envoy urged an inclusive Syrian transition based on a 9-year-old Security Council resolution during a meeting with the commander of Syria's new administration, Ahmed al-Shara. Pedersen said on Sunday he hoped for a swift end to the sanctions to help facilitate economic recovery. Syria's ruling General Command, in a separate statement about Sunday's meeting with the UN's Geir Pedersen, said they had discussed the need to review Security Council Resolution 2254, a roadmap outlined by the Security Council for the country in 2015. Better known by his rebel nom de guerre Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, Chara said it needed to be updated to suit the new reality. That resolution calls for a Syrian-led process facilitated by the United Nations, establishing within 6 months non-sectarian governance and setting a schedule for a process of drafting a new constitution. It also calls for free and fair elections. Meanwhile, Peterson also visited Cignal prison, from where many detainees were freed after Assad's overthrow and were met by tearful relatives who thought they had been executed years ago.
So I just responded to what we need to do to make sure that we have accountability and justice. And this process needs to start with support to the families, the survivors and the victims, and to make sure that we preserve the evidence. So this is extremely important.
President-elect Trump reiterated his threat against Hamas if hostages are not released by January 20th, the day he takes office. Trump said he had a very good talk with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about the war in Gaza, describing it as a recap call.
On Bibi, we had a very good talk. We discussed what is going to happen, and I'll be very available on January 20th, and we'll see. As you know, I gave warning that if these hostages aren't back home by that date, all hell's going to break out, and very strong. But we generally just discussed, I asked him, where are things? Mike Waltz they're doing a great job, by the way. Everybody is very happy. I think he's doing a fantastic job. But he was very much involved in the call. But it was a recap call more than anything else.
More than 100 hostages have been freed through negotiations or Israeli military rescue operations. Of the 100 still held in Gaza, roughly half are believed to be alive. President Joe Biden recently dispatched more senior aides to the region to try and secure a long-sought ceasefire deal. Meanwhile, Yemen's Houthi militants said on Monday they fired a ballistic missile at a military target in Jaffa, considered another act of solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza. Tel Aviv's military said the missile was shot down before it crossed into Israel. Well, President-elect Trump says he would talk to Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky about bringing the war in Ukraine to an end. He says he's troubled by images of carnage from the conflict. Trump did not give a direct answer when asked whether he believed Ukraine should cede territory to Russia as part of the negotiated settlement to the nearly 3-year-old war. Trump said much of the territory in dispute has been reduced to rubble and would take a century to recover from.
And one of the people that came to pay his respects is, as you know, Ukraine, Zelensky. And he would like to have peace. He wants peace. Everyone's being killed. It's the worst carnage that this world has seen since World War II. I've had pictures of fields where bodies are lying on top of bodies. Looks like the old pictures of the Civil War, where just bodies are all over. Just if you saw those pictures, you'd feel more strongly about it. It's got to stop. We're going to see. We're going to be talking. We'll be talking to President Putin, and we'll be talking to the representatives, Zelensky and representatives from Ukraine. We got to stop it. It's carnage.
What should Zelensky, if anything, be prepared to give up to end this war?
He should be prepared to make a deal. That's all. Got to be a deal. No, got to be a deal. Too many people being killed. That is a war that's hard. Too many people. Got to make a deal. And Putin has to make a deal.
What deal would you
Putin has to make a deal, and Putin would have never gone in if I was president. I think we're going to be in a good place in the Middle East. I think the Middle East will be in a good place. I think actually more difficult is going to be the Russia-Ukraine situation. I see that as more difficult. I don't think they should have allowed missiles to be shot 200 miles into Russia. I think that was a bad thing. And that brought the Koreans in, North Korea, another man I get along with very well.
Well, the United States hit North Korea and Russia on Monday with new sanctions that the Treasury Department said targeted Pyongyang's financial activities and military support to Moscow. The sanctions, which list North Korean banks, generals, and other officials, as well as Russian oil shipping companies, are the latest U.S. measure aimed at disrupting North Korea's support to Russia's war in Ukraine. The U.S. Treasury Department said in a statement that North Korea's actions, including its most recent test of a long-range ballistic missile and its deepening military support to Russia, undermine the stability of the region and sustain Putin's war in Ukraine. North Korean banks targeted by the sanctions include Golden Triangle Bank and Korea Mandal Credit Bank. The sanctions freeze the U.S. assets of the designated entities, ban their trade with Americans, and block them from transactions with the U.S. financial system. In other news, Indonesia's largest party has officially expelled former President Joko Widodo after he spurned the party's own candidate in February elections and backed Prabowo Subianto's successful campaign to become the leader of Southeast Asia's biggest economy. Indonesian Democratic Party of Struggle chairwoman known as PDIP Megawati Soekarno Putri made the decision to expel Jokowi, as the former leader is popularly known along with his eldest son and son-in-law. Senior party official Komarudin Wutuban also told Bloomberg more than 24 party members were dismissed. After twice defeating Prabowo in presidential polls, Jokowi backed his former rival in the 2024 elections, with his eldest son successfully running to be Prabowo's vice president. He has also secured influence through the election of his son-in-law as governor of North Sumatra, while several of his former key ministers are now in Prabowo's cabinet. The expulsion will fuel speculation about his plans as he looks to preserve his legacy and dynasty after a decade in power. Analysts have said the still popular politician may form his own party or join another political group to support his family's support base. Finally, a giant gingerbread village containing hundreds of confectionery structures is on display for the holidays at the Shops at Columbus Circle, an indoor mall in New York City. Gingerbread Lane artist and creator John Lovitch, a former executive chef, said this is the 30th year making the village. This year, Lovitch took inspiration from the streets of New York City. The village showcases a bagel store, a pumpkin spice latte shop, a subway station, even Santa Claus riding an iconic yellow taxicab. What keeps him going year after year, he says, is the ability to bring joy to others. He goes through thousands of pounds of candy, egg whites, and flour. And despite rising prices, the baker and bargain shopper said he has tricks to beat the pain of sticker shock.
Prices went up, no doubt. There's nothing that's ever cheaper, but the trick remains, you got to wait these merchants out until they're willing to give it to you cheaper. So if you wait till certain holidays, you notice some of the prices of things comes down, particularly Easter, Christmas, things of that nature. They start selling more sugar and more flour because more people are baking, and they actually lower their prices. And then obviously the trick is to buy the candy the day after the holiday. Behind me is 720 houses. The existing Guinness World Record, which we hold, is 1,251. Since this is over our original world record of 157 and nobody's ever broke it, we're still allowed to call ourselves the largest in the world. This year we have 4 locations. We're here in New York City, the flagship, because I live here in New York City, and then just a little bit south in Baltimore, and then we have an exhibit in New Orleans, Louisiana, our first time there, and then Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco, also our first time. I think what really motivates me at this point, as you can see while you're here covering this, is the reaction that people have to it. It's very positive, and regardless of what's going on with COVID or Trump and Biden or the economy or the weather or your mortgage or whatever it is, this has a lovely escapist quality. 5, 10, 15 minutes, you tend to forget about your problems, and it definitely, young, old, anything in between, people really love it, and you see the reaction on their faces, just today, just being here, seeing people walk up to it, it just makes you feel good.
Gingerbread Lane will be on display in New York City through January 5th. And that's all for now. Thank you so much for joining us. Catch up with us again tomorrow at 10 when we bring you the world in 30 minutes, only on World Newsfeed. Follow the Money comes next. Keep it here on the Bilyonaryo News channel, always on time.